Welcome to another episode of Saving the Association. Today, we are joined by an awesome guest, a little unique to our show, not a former player at the NBA level anyways. The host of the Iconic Sonics podcast, YouTube channel, and Instagram account, among other representation, I'm sure, Danny Ball. Danny, welcome.
Hey guys, how are we doing? Thanks so much for having me. And just a measly old Division III club player. But yeah, proud to be here and excited to chat some hoops with you guys.
That's great. Yeah, we look forward to it, man. That's great. Hey, D3 is still a division, so we respect and honor that around here. Danny, you do a lot in the way of representing Seattle Supersonics basketball, and today we're going to talk about a little bit of the history of the team, your affiliation, as someone who grew up in Seattle and then moved to upstate New York. You've been in and out of the geographical movement of the team, and obviously we know that the team has gone away, which we'll get into. We're excited to hear a little bit about just your take on things and then also your outlook towards the future. Before we do that, Brett and I always start with a segment called the Full Court Press. Brett played center in high school. I did not. I was the point guard, so Brett was hanging out at half court watching it all unfold.
Take job.
Yeah. And but for this segment, we're going to hit you with the Full Court Press, and Brett will get that started.
All right. Well, hey, you already kind of answered this a little bit, but what was the highest level of basketball you played, and where did you play?
Yeah, it's funny. I said club D3 level. I honestly would probably say that my junior and senior year of high school was higher level basketball than that. New York State is pretty well known for putting on some pretty good players. So I had the unfortunate pleasure of having to guard Kevin Herter throughout high school and getting a lot of times we went zone. Like, let's be honest, we went zone, and then Kevin would just shoot over the zone. And I can vividly remember a JV year. Kevin is a 7th grader, by the way, on JV at this point. I'm a sophomore. And my friend Mike is guarding him, and we get to the locker room, and this is no disrespect to Kevin Herter at all. It was just our coach trying to light a fire under our ass. And I don't know if we can swear. Sorry.
Oh yeah, we're a minimal swear podcast. Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, should have asked that before we got on. But our coach storms in the locker room, throws the door open. Really, Graves? The redhead has 25 points at halftime. And little did he know in 7th grade that he'd end up being NBA regular. But yeah, so the high school level is probably the highest, which glory years for everybody. But yeah, we had some pretty good teams. We lost to the eventual state champs my junior year. We didn't have as great a senior year, but high level high school New York basketball.
Awesome. Red Velvet, it'll do
it.
To
Red Velvet, the Red Mamba, Red Velvet, all the above. Yeah, he was, and then I worked for his trainer. It was my first internship in the basketball world, so I got a front court seat to his 6 a.m. workouts where he just makes the game look so unbelievably easy. Oh, wow. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that's when I knew I wouldn't be in the league.
Yeah, exactly. That was our next question. It's different for everybody. I joked with some of the NBA guys. It was right after conception for myself. Brett a little bit later. But it sounds like, you were maybe early on as well in high school type area when you knew this just wasn't my path.
Definitely. Yeah. My sophomore year, I was still probably 5'7". I didn't hit my growth spurt till late. I'm about 6'3" now, which is nice for men's league, but I did not have that in high school, was not getting recruited. And yeah, I think it was a summer league AAU game. I was still wiping the crust out of my eyes, and I looked up and I watched Kevin Herter throw a bounce pass to his brother, and he dunked right as I was walking into the gymnasium. And I think it was that morning. I think we ended up then getting 30-pieced by a full court press team in the honor of this segment. Just got the heck pressed out of us. And but yeah, so it was very early on for me too, or at least early on in high school.
That's awesome.
Cool. When did you develop your love for the Sonics?
Yeah, I mean, early on, as Tanner said, I was born in Seattle. I have a bunch of family out here, which has made moving back great. And so I'd always hear stories, not just about the Sonics, but the Storm too. I have an uncle who was a very early adopter of the WNBA, which was cool. But yeah, I've had a love for the Sonics since as early as I can remember. I was using them on NBA Street Volume 2, Ray and Richard on NBA Live. Because I was in New York, I wasn't able to go to many games. We went to one while we were out here one summer. But other than that, I was really just kind of parasocial. I was a young kid who really loved the fact that he was from Seattle, and so I was really proud of that. I was a Mariners fan and a Seahawks fan, um, but yeah, so early on, and just would kind of keep up with the team, and so yeah, probably like third or fourth grade when I really started getting into basketball. I wanted to be a hockey player at first. My parents told me it was way too expensive, and so they gave me a basketball, a pair of shoes, and a hoop in the driveway, and after that, it was Sonics and Kobe Bryant.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Ray and Richard. Are either of those your all-time like favorite players, or who's been like that guy for you?
Yeah, it's funny. We talk about so many different players that I feel like it really kind of rotates. So when Richard was out here in last October for the preseason game in Seattle, I was obviously watching a bunch of tape on him before we did a podcast together. And so yeah, I think I definitely brought back a lot of memories. And short white guy, I was obviously a shooter. So if I could shoot anything like those guys, maybe I would have made it a little further in my career. So yeah, I mean, I think right now, my favorite player to watch and my favorite player, at the time is now Sam Perkins. It's been fun to go back and watch his game. He also went to high school not far from where I went to, and so that was always cool to see his jersey retired up there and hear my dad's stories about watching him in the '90s out here and stuff. So right now it's Sam Perkins, but on any given week or month, depending on what I'm researching or who's coming on the pod, it can kind of rotate.
Yeah, Sam was a little bit ahead of his time, similar to Jack Sikma. That's kind of stretch big, that could also get a little physical in the post.
Totally. Yeah, big body, but could still stretch the floor. I'm in the middle of breaking down the 1995 series against the Lakers when the Sonics were down in Tacoma for a year. And he had a great season and really just was an unbelievable add off the bench to that team. And I think in that way, too, like there's been so many great six men that have played for the Sonics throughout their time that he's just another one on that list.
Yeah. Do you have? I know I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. I'm rocking a Wolves hat, but I'm a big Bulls fan. Do you have like a most frustrating Sonic player that's ever been on your team that you're just like, come on?
That's a good question. I mean, I think if anything, it's more so, again, retroactively being a little bit on the younger side here. It's going back and getting the history after the fact. I wouldn't say he was actually a Sonics player, but one of the most frustrating things for me was finding out that the Sonics drafted Scottie Pippen and then traded him on draft night. So that one didn't age super well, but it is what it is. I think that was always one that was frustrating. And then I guess other than that, like there's some others ones that didn't pan out. Patrick Ewing is obviously an unbelievable Hall of Famer and great player, but his time in Seattle wasn't exactly anything to write home about. So there's a couple like that. Anybody that was here for a long time, it's hard to find them frustrating because I feel like not many guys have anything bad to say about Seattle. So yeah, not too many that come to mind that are frustrating, but some front office moves that retroactively grind my gears.
Yeah. Speaking of that, do you feel like, so I'm a big Jazz guy, and like mid to late '90s was really our time, and then later on a couple of small runs, but the Gary and Sean and Detlef, like when you guys are this close, like are there any moves looking back now that you're like, man, if we could have just added this guy or this type of guy, I think that would have got us over the edge? Or was Jordan just too much? Or were these teams too much,
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I feel like if anything, as I was saying, that 95 year looking back, I've been watching them play the Lakers and Nick Van Exel was just kind of lighting them up, along with some other guys. And I think if anything, it's more so it's the 94 and 95 years where the Rockets win, and the Sonics got bounced both years in the first round. Obviously that Denver series, anytime I post anything from 1994, it immediately is met with a lot of contention, because that is just such a frustrating memory for Sonics fans. So I think if anything, it's more so just looking back on those series and, again, hindsight's 2020, right? You can look back and say, oh, we should have done this with Dikembe Mutombo, or we should have, not been doubling Vlade Divac in the post the way that they were, which just at times is frustrating to watch, watching Detlef come over and double, which, you know, I'm sure is no fault of his own. And I still think of George Karl as unbelievable and an all-time coach. But yeah, I think it's more so stuff like that where you're just like, oh man, if we could do one thing different, or if literally lightning doesn't strike and hit a generator at the Tacoma Dome and have a 20-minute power outage in the middle of a game against the Lakers, maybe that series goes a different way. And I think in 95, they were like the second favorite betting odds wise to win the championship. So yeah, working on a little piece right now that the working title is How Lightning Led to Thunder because of that power outage. So I think a lot of times it's strategical stuff. Again, because I wasn't even alive back then, it's hard to look back and say, hey, they should have traded for this guy or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but I like to try to be an archivist and dig some stuff up. So there could be an old Seattle Times article about a trade that went through that I'll see in a month here or so, and you'll probably see me on the account asking what if we traded for da or whatever. But I mean, to your point as well, like, look, even as a younger guy, as all of us did, watched The Last Dance and was just in awe. As I also mentioned earlier, I grew up a big fan of Kobe, and he was obviously a big fan of Mike. And, you know, he's said that without 23, there wouldn't be 24. And I think at the end of the day, he is Mike, right? And there's a reason that he's got 6 of them things. And so I think it's a little bit of both. They probably could have done anything they wanted, and he probably would have found a way. Is kind of how I feel.
I have to agree that George was the right guy for the coach, though. I don't know if I'm sure you've read Furious George, and quick plug for George Karl's book. That is awesome. If you like NBA stories, it is really good. And we've got some ties as Idaho boys. His son Colby at Boise State, and that's kind of cool for us. But
that's awesome.
In reading a lot of those matchups and the way that George's mind was around, taking on like an unstoppable force. Like, I think he was the guy. It's just sometimes it breaks your way and sometimes it doesn't. And no one knows better than the 97, 98 Jazz. I mean, it's like, I just relate to almost everything you're saying, especially with the Kings too.
I don't relate.
Don't be nuts. He doesn't get it as much.
But, really quick, going back to that trade, the Polonese for Pippen, I do think, like, if you go back in NBA history, that one trade could have altered if they would have kept Pippen. Like, think about the Sonics in the 90s with Peyton, Pippen, and Kemp. Like, that would have been, like, probably just as dominant.
Yeah. And I mean, just defensively, they were already so good. And then you add Scottie Pippen in there. And obviously, Scotty's, everybody kind of knows the story about him coming up as a point guard and then having that huge growth spurt. Like, just another ball handler out there. Again, even just going back and watching how they had Nate and Gary out on the floor, and I think we're still in the full court press segment here. Those guys were getting pressed, and they were pressing a lot, which is cool to go back and see, of a team that just picks up full court and wants to try to speed the other team up. We don't really see that all that often anymore. The Oklahoma redacted names like to do that a lot. But so it's really interesting to think about if Scotty was there and just how dynamic that team would have been on both ends of the court.
Yeah. Well, hey, we got one more question in the press, and then we'll take off the pressure.
Let's do it.
Since the Sonics have left the league, is there a team that you tend to root for outside of this area?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I just purged my closet. I'll give a shameless plug to one of our sponsors, Simply Seattle, who hooks me up with a bunch of Sonics gear, and hooks up a bunch of our fans and trivia winners and whatnot with Sonics gear. And so it's hard for me to have other affiliations. I'm lucky enough to have some friends and connections in the league, so every once in a while I get Nuggets on court gear or Bulls on court gear, and I keep it, and I'll play pickup in it and whatnot. But right now, I'd say I have been loving the Luka Laker experience, and I mean, he's just the way that he plays at his own pace is something that I admire, and he's super fun to watch. I also tend to have a fiery competitive side. If you ask a couple friends that are on my men's league team, they definitely let you know I tend to not take kindly to anybody talking to me, and it's all it takes is one line for me to kind of get ramped up a little bit. So I think I also see a very small bit of myself in Luka sometimes with that fire that he has. But I've just always liked guys that play the game that way. So yeah, I as a stand-in until they come back, we'll be watching the Lakers predominantly. But I'm also just a league pass junkie, and depending on what the matchup is, it could be Blazers Wizards, and I probably have it on in the background. So just overall basketball junkie. But yeah, right now the Lakers are who I tend to root for.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. That's great. Well, you did it, man. You beat the press. Nice work.
Great. I love it.
Yep.
I love it.
Good job. Next, we want to talk about the expansion process. Obviously, Seattle's come up quite a bit in the headlines over the last few months, and it's kind of a roller coaster, right? It's like good news, wait, good news, ooh, maybe not great news. And so, can you summarize for our listeners and just for other people out there, maybe simplify what the NBA expansion process looks like?
Totally. So, I mean, I'll start with we'll start a little bit back in the timeline, and I'll run everybody up to present day. I think right now we're seeing the league is pro expansion. They have a focus on Europe right now. But the reason that they kind of ended up there was that they did slow walk expansion. And we heard a lot about 3 different kind of checkpoints that they wanted to hit before they were going to cross that bridge. At first, they wanted to get the CBA done, and they wanted to renegotiate that with the players. They then wanted to also wait for the media rights deal to be done, which obviously was a record-setting deal. 11 years, $76 billion, I think was the final figure. And then after they got that done, the last thing they wanted to get done was they wanted the sale of the Celtics to get done, and they wanted to check those 3 things off, so that the salary cap and the salary and the CBA had been negotiated, and that was in place. The media rights deal is obvious, an influx of new money into the league, and so they wanted that to be done before they would cross the bridge of expansion. And then the last one being the sale of the Celtics, which by all means kind of reset the marketplace, is the term that gets thrown around a lot, because the Celtics don't own TD Garden, and they still got sold for over $6 billion. And so I think that was something that the league wanted to see through, so that they could kind of then come to these potential new ownership groups and say, hey, the cost of adding a team will be anywhere from $5 to $6 billion. I've even heard 7 started to be floated around as a number that could be what they want to fetch for those new teams. And then, so now we're at the point where they'll need, I believe it's 23 out of the 30 owners to vote positively. A lot of times what I hear from different sources is that they'd want even more than that 23 number. They'd want closer to 25 or 26 owners to be pro expansion, just to make sure that they don't put it up for a vote. And then if something was to go awry, or if there was a group that would probably be led by James Dolan that's anti-expansion, it'd be a really bad look for them to have a vote go sour and not get passed. I believe there's also a provision within the agreement with the owners in the league that when you vote on an issue, there's a substantial amount of time you have to wait until you can bring that same issue up for a vote again. So I know that they're kind of treading delicately about really officially bringing it to the table. And then the other kind of term that gets thrown around a lot around of expansion is that it really is like sharing an investment, a slice of the investment of the league with a new owner, in the same way that a business would sell their stock, right? So we hear that kind of comparison a lot. And that's what's really kind of starting to hold up this deal, is that the next part of expansion would be all of the owners, as we've heard, it most likely would be 2 teams. All of those owners would lose a percentage. It's about 0.2%, but to billionaires, that's a lot of money. They would go from 1/30th of those media rights share to 1/32nd. And we've had Mark Cuban on the podcast before, and he's essentially explained expansion as a loan, because you're getting this fee up front that is divided 30 ways, and then you're slowly but surely essentially paying that loan back in the money that you lose through the media rights. So we've got a friend of the podcast, Chris Gunther, who is a big analytics guy and also a former finance guy. So we're actually in the middle of a pretty big deep dive on what those numbers look like, and just how much expansion, or how much franchises have been growing in value. And so we'll get into a more in-depth breakdown of the financial side of it on our pod. But in kind of layman's terms, I feel like that's kind of the best way that I can explain it, would be that now we're finding out that some owners, I want to hold on and clutch their pearls and hold on to as much money as they can. And so that's kind of holding up the train right now.
Sounds like owners.
Yeah, wow.
It does.
So this is a little bit more from a fan standpoint. If an expansion draft were to happen, let's say the Sonics are back, baby,
Yeah.
and there's an expansion draft that would happen. Is there a player that maybe has a shot at getting left off the keep form for those teams that you would love to have for Sonics culture?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think when I think about expansion drafts, I know that we're also kind of going through the process of trying to do a mock expansion draft right now. So I've been going through the rosters and seeing who people would save now with the timeline being slowed down even more so, looking out 2 years in the future. So I think it could be a long shot that he's even still in great playing shape. But I think with his age and what the contract would probably look like, I feel like there might be a slim chance that Kevin Durant could be left on that board. He could be a free agent. He would be almost 40 at that point. And so I think, everybody calls for it. And Kevin has been such a champion of Seattle that even if it's a slim chance, I think that would be my answer. There's obviously other guys. Trey Murphy is a name that always comes to mind. I think there's, even like Scoot down in Portland, guys that are young, maybe haven't panned out already, but would possibly be on the fringe of, just being old enough to not be a young developmental project for a team anymore, that, they'd be okay letting go. So any of those guys would be fine with me. And I think the heartwarming thing and the exciting thing about that is going back to another guest we had on the podcast, David Aldridge, was just talking about how much shorter the timeline is now for an expansion team to end up being good, right? And I think a lot of the times what I've heard about the expansion thought process as a GM is you want to take bad contracts early and get draft compensation back, right? So taking someone like, for example, if Bradley Beal had been floating around with that big contract, yes, it obviously didn't really pan out in Phoenix, but if the Sonics were around this year and they could take Bradley Beal from the Suns for a couple first rounders, look, he's still going to put up 25 points a night. He's still going to have, basically still 50, 40, 90 shooting splits. So it's not like Bradley Beal is completely washed up, but I think the goal would be to have some good draft picks and stuff. So it's guys that are, and I've joked about this with other people too. It's guys that are, sophomores and juniors in high school right now that, hopefully are Sonics of the future. So yeah, I think that's another route that would kind of be taken. And, it took the Heat, I think 18 years from 98 when they were introduced to the league to 2006 to win their first title. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that in under a decade or closer to like 5 or 7 years that a team could kind of turn it around and be a contender. So the early years might not be pretty, but basketball being back in Seattle would be enough for everybody, I think.
Yeah, I was when we were going to have you on earlier, I did a little research and just looked at all the expansion teams since like 89 or 88 or whatever. And I think 5 seasons is the shortest span it's took for a team to finally make the playoffs.
It is, yep.
Most of them haven't won a championship.
Right.
But there's been a few that have been successful. But yeah, it's not a guarantee. Like you get a team, and sometimes you're stuck in mediocrity or a losing culture for a while. But it would be a cool full circle moment to have Kevin Durant come back in a scenario like that. That would be pretty sweet.
Totally. And I would need, all I would need is like 30 home games, I don't even need a full season. I think just those moments and him being in the building because he has, just shown so much love, even when he came up here for a preseason game with the Warriors and stuff. It would be a very cool full circle moment. And, wishful thinking to think that, he might be at the end of his career, slowing down a little bit, and possibly could get left off the saved roster spots in the expansion draft.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. There's a lot of talk around teams like the Pelicans, and even the Hornets in the past about these not being maybe sustainable markets. And I used to fear for that myself as a Jazz fan, but I think we're protected for a long time, which is really good. But what are your thoughts on relocation of a franchise? Obviously, you're very familiar with that, but versus the expansion of like a new market, right? And so I think there's a clear difference there, but I want to get some of your take on that.
Yeah, totally. I'll use an on-court example to explain an off-court phenomenon, I guess.
Okay.
This year specifically, I feel like we saw a rise in ethical hoops and ethical scoring. I will not mention the player that I'm thinking that shot a lot of free throws this year out of respect for the franchise. But yeah, I think a lot of people, as I've posted those graphics, I've seen probably a 60-40 or 70-30 split, 70% of those people being on the side of not wanting to do what Oklahoma City did to us, right? And I think there's also a denomination of, there's a difference of an owner coming in and buying a franchise and moving them versus a franchise really being given its shot to try and find a market. And not that Bill Simmons is right on many things or that he should be looked to as the Northern Star, but it has been a 40-50 year experiment in New Orleans. And the support just isn't really there. And that's not to say that there aren't lots of Pelicans fans. There definitely are. But just looking at attendance numbers and revenue numbers and stuff, it has been tough for them. And so I think I land mostly on that side of, I wouldn't want to do that to another city, even if they were struggling, quote unquote, to support their franchise. At the end of the day, I also feel for those people that are on the side of, I just want basketball back in Seattle, no matter how it happens. I totally understand that as well. I would prefer expansion. I also would prefer it just because I think it would give me a lot of content. Like we just were talking about an expansion draft. And I've fantasized of the days of making graphics about who our draft picks are and who we're, throwing up mock trade graphics, because covering a team that doesn't exist, I end up talking a lot more about the business of basketball than on-court basketball. And so, yeah, I think it's a tough topic. I think if it was to happen, the only way that I would feel somewhat okay with it would be if they really had been given all of the opportunities and they've exhausted all those. But even at that, it just in my heart of hearts, it just wouldn't feel right taking another team. And the Pelicans in general didn't have a great offseason. I know that it wouldn't be an immediate switch, but they made some questionable moves. I'm not the biggest Jordan Poole fan, admittedly. I think that a lot of guys go to Washington and they don't have to play meaningful basketball, and it then kind of hurts. I mean, we saw it with Kyle Kuzma in the playoffs, right? It's hard to go and play for a team that is kind of intentionally tanking and then go somewhere else and try to ramp it up. So, I think that's also a worry for me, would be just inheriting another GM and their decisions rather than getting a blank slate.
Turns out if you move to a new city, you're still the same guy. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So, yes, I found that out myself.
He
could strip them for parts, but we won't get into that. Sorry,
yeah, right.
If expansion were to happen, Las Vegas is looking like one of the teams poised to get one. And obviously Seattle is another one of those teams cities that's been really talked about. But what's another city that maybe poses threat to Seattle when it comes to expansion?
Yeah. We're seeing it this preseason, right? For the last 3 years, we've had what was called as the Rain City Showcase up here at Climate Pledge. We'd have a preseason game with the Clippers. They've played everybody from the Jazz to who else has been up here? Well, maybe you want to say the Rockets. But yeah, I think the worrisome thing there is that this year there is no preseason game in Seattle. And so after a summer of kind of leading us on and not really getting the news that we wanted in July at the Board of Governors meeting, I think that's kind of another, just punch to the gut for Seattle of we're not even going to get our normal kind of preseason game that we've all come accustomed to up here. The attendance at those games is right on average, right on par with the league average. League average is about 18,300 a night. And so up here it was about 18,200 people or so that were showing up to the games. And that's for a preseason game. And obviously it's the only one that we get. But to answer your question, I think Vancouver is starting to come into the mix, and they have a preseason game this year in October rather than Seattle. And I think that the league is starting to think about that. It obviously opens up Canada a little bit more. It's also close enough to Asia and the other side of the world that it also opens up that market. So I think that they're a serious threat. And then I had a great chat on the podcast with Nick Lagis, who is he's the GM down. He was the GM for the G League team in Mexico City, and now he's with Diablos Rojos, I believe is the name of the team. That's in a Mexican league, but more and more Mexico City, again, opening up that international market. It would be a little bit of a nightmare. The elevation is a lot. We actually got into that conversation, and I didn't know that until I started researching it, how much higher in elevation it is even than Denver. It's about 50% more elevated, which is just crazy to think about. But I think that is it's as Nick said on the podcast, it's not a when, it's not an if, it's a when for that city, getting some sort of team. And yeah, I mean, they've also, Mexico City's hosted regular season games, not even preseason games. So that's another thing that you can put on that checklist for that city, that Seattle doesn't have. So I think those are the two that come to mind, would be Vancouver and Mexico City. Nashville gets thrown around, St. Louis gets thrown around, Pittsburgh even gets thrown around. Just from a jersey standpoint, it'd be cool to see another black and yellow jersey in Pittsburgh, but obviously my loyalty lies to Seattle. So I think the other thing that's hopeful is a lot of people we talk to say it's Seattle first, and all the owners know that, and then it's wherever else you want to put a team. So I feel pretty confident that we're still in that one spot, but yeah, Vancouver and Mexico City would kind of be my answers there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're cheering for you, man. We hope that Seattle gets a team. Brett and I have our fair share of trading cards and Seattle memorabilia tucked in our storage and other places, and
Love
been
it.
a big part of our growing up too. I mean, like you said, like there's a lot of stuff you look back and see, wow, that was cool, and we both had lived it, and I think we miss it too. And so we're cheering for you, and really appreciate you coming on. I'm very impressed with the research you've done. Clearly, you know your stuff, and that's not just because you're immersed in it. It's because you take the time and the effort to talk to people and get other perspectives, and very in touch with the community. So what's next for the Iconic Sonics? What's on the docket for you guys?
Yeah, it's a great segue, and I appreciate the kind words, Tanner. It means a lot. I try to do right by all the Sonics fans that are still out here, and we still see lots of Sonics gear around the city, which is heartwarming, and promising. What's next for Iconic Sonics is we just were talking about expansion, and obviously we'll continue to cover that however we can. With the sale of the Blazers, we've started to talk about that, and thankfully that feels like they're going to be staying in Portland, which, as for somebody who goes down to some Blazers games every year, is a good sign. But for us, we don't want to tease people too long, and you can only post rumors and speculation so many times until people just kind of get fed up with it. So we'll be keeping a close eye and staying in touch with our sources and people on the podcast that have insight to expansion, but we're also going to be moving more towards archival and documentary style content on our YouTube channel, as well as the podcast. We've got some interesting stories. As I was mentioning, the Lightning led to Thunder story about 1995 and being down in Tacoma is one that I know we're excited to tell. We also want to highlight Spencer Haywood's story because he is so impactful and led to so many guys being able to come out of high school and college early in his Supreme Court case. So there's a lot of human interest stories and things that are within the realm of the Sonics and basketball, but also are a little bit outside of that. So yeah, we'll be focusing on those things, and we'll always try to be staying in touch with fans. As you just said, the best way that I learn about this team and the history is through the DMs that I get and the conversations that I have in person at events. And so yeah, just still trying to stay in touch with those guys, and maybe be on the lookout for some merchandise coming out soon. And yeah, I think the big focus with me would be trying to find some of those older stories that we can highlight. And in a year here, we're going to have a first overall draft pick who the Sonics weren't a thing when they were born. And I'm fearing for the day that I have to post that graphic about an 18 or 19-year-old kid who literally was not alive when the Sonics were around. And so, I'm trying to keep the spirit alive and keep people informed. It's cool to even see, 15, 16-year-old kids that already follow us that, got their Gary Payton's jerseys passed down from their dad and are trying to bring the team back. So that'll be the focus. And yeah, we're excited to kind of find a new lane here as expansion slows down a little bit.
Yeah. Well, hey, we just want to close with maybe one more little segment, and I'm going to the question a little bit. What's your biggest Sonic fanboy moment that you've had being able to be a part of the Iconic Sonics? You get to interview players or meet people. What's been your biggest fanboy moment?
Yeah, it was a cool crossover. I also am a big Sue Bird fan. She's getting a statue here August 15th. She's getting one in a couple days this weekend. And so I got to bring in my little Toyota Camry, Coach George Carl and Richard Lewis, and then Brett on my side of things, who I work with, over to the Storm practice facility, which was the first practice facility designed intentionally for a women's basketball team, as a lot of those NBA teams get the hand-me-downs from the NBA teams in town or big colleges. But it was the first training facility that was made intentionally for a women's basketball team. It's a beautiful facility. Before I brought those guys over there, I had the pleasure of having their GM give me a tour of it, and just getting to see all the different ins and outs and all the facilities they have there. But that was just cool because in the car ride, I got to, throw out some questions to George and Richard about different moments or different players, or, Richard, tell me about a time you got teed up or whatever, which is always, as somebody has mentioned earlier, I'm a little fiery. I like hearing about when guys blow their top a little bit. But that was a really cool one, just funny seeing Richard Lewis trying to fit into my Camry, which just reminds me of, how early on in this process I am. And it's not always super glorious behind the scenes, but just to see that connection. And, I also kind of stand by the fact of, like, if you don't support the Storm now, like, you don't really deserve to support the Sonics when they come back, because they are an unbelievable team, and they're statistically Seattle's most successful franchise. So I think that was a moment that was really cool to see those guys, to see their love, to hear Richard talk about how, it was cool to see the Storm when they were first coming up and just how much they've done for themselves in building that league. So yeah, it was a cool crossover moment. And, if you had told me at 13, 14 years old that that's something I'd be doing, I wouldn't have believed you.
That's great.
That's amazing. Yeah. What a cool scenario for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for coming on, Danny. Go check out Iconic Sonics on Instagram, on YouTube, and obviously wherever you get your podcasts. And Danny will keep you posted. He'll educate you if you're young,
for sure.
This is like your history book, right? And so,
I hope so. Yeah, Sonic's Encyclopedia. Well, I want to give a shout out to you guys too. I love the stuff that you're doing. You came onto our radar very early, and just impressed with all the guests, the questions, the production here. You guys are doing a great thing. I think with a lot of the stuff that is said online about where the league is headed, it frustrates me. I know that a lot of the time it frustrates me because I probably see some truth in it about the way the game is played, and the way that it's marketed, and the, even the narrative around the talking heads and how negative it can be, the coverage of it. So I think what you guys are doing is great, and it was an honor coming on, and I appreciate you allowing me to reach out and throw myself in there as a guest, even though I never even sniffed an NBA court. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to you guys, and keep killing it.
You bet. Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Of course.
Have you back on one of these days, and maybe with some updates. Who knows? So
hopefully with some good news for sure. I'm crossing my fingers, and I'd be happy to do it.
Absolutely. All right, guys, go like and subscribe. Check out both channels, and we'll talk to you next time.